UFC 281, we get to see a legend make a final appearance in the octagon. It's not all that often that we get to see a guy come out beforehand and say, hey, this is going to be the last time, guys. This is going to be my last go-around. This is going to be the last time you see me. Usually, we're talking about it. There's whispers about it. We're wondering when a guy's going to retire. And then he goes out there and gets the brakes beat off him. And he takes off his gloves and he leaves him in the middle of the octagon. And in the post-fight speech, he tells us this is it. Right? Tells us the training camps are too much. As much as he loves it, as much as he's going to miss it. He wants to be at home with the family. Has some other things that he wants to do in his life. Doesn't really want to get beat up for a living anymore. And it's awesome, man. We all understand it. We likely love him while he was in there, and we likely love him for it. But it's not all that often that we get to hear somebody announce it beforehand. But that's what we're getting with Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar came out before, and he's like, this is it, man. This is my last go-around, guys. Hope everybody enjoys it. Now, look, I'm a huge Frankie Edgar fan. Been watching him for forever and a day, it feels like. I remember the wars with Gray Maynard, particularly that first fight. I remember that this man was constantly undersized. People constantly telling him he needs to go down in weight. Constantly telling him that he can't compete at 155 pounds. All he did was go out there and snatch up the belt. All he did was go out there and put on some legendary performances. Give us one of the greatest trilogies we've seen. Go out there in dominating fashion over BJ Penn. That's all. You know, just a little bit here and there. Just some relatively easy, everyday type stuff, right? Then he drops down in weight. Then he drops down in weight again. We're now seeing a former 155-pound title holder who is incredibly impressive pop up all the way down to 135. Fought for the belt at 145. Couldn't come out with the victory. Comes down 135. Dude, like I said, what a legend, man. What a legend. And you think about it. This guy came all the way from being a college wrestler. I remember I was watching this one thing. It was probably like a UFC, I don't know, behind the scenes, build up to something all the way back, UFC 100 and whatever. And Frankie Edgar was talking, and he said he was a successful college wrestler, but he didn't know what he wanted to do afterwards. And he graduates, and he's coming out, and he's like, I don't know what to do, man. There's really not a professional career for wrestlers. We're not going into the WWE or nothing like that. And he said he was having a conversation with himself, and he thought, man, I wish somebody would pay me to just work out. I'm pretty good at that. And he's doing these odd jobs like being a carpenter and things like that. And lo and behold, one way or another, he finds his way into MMA. And then we see him in the UFC. You think about it, and it's like it's so random. And it was relatively, early on when you're thinking about the fact that the Fertitta brothers and Dana White and all them, when did they get involved with the UFC? I think they bought it in like 2001. Then it kind of starts to blow up with the Ultimate Fighter and stuff. So just all relatively early, and Frankie Edgar's been there for the whole time, man. And now we get to see him on this very last trip. Sending him off in Madison Square Garden. Sending him off against, I'll call it another hometown guy, Chris Gutierrez, right? Because he's training out in New Jersey as well, right? Different gym, obviously. He's training over there at Factory X with Mark Montoya. But it's an interesting fight because on the one hand, I look at it and I think, how's the UFC going to do this guy? An absolute legend like Frankie Edgar, who's been there forever, who moves the needle, been a headliner, selling pay-per-views for you, done all of these things. Are you going to send him off with an easy fight? Are you going to send him off with something where he gets tested? Are you going to send him off where you are like one of these dirty boxing promoters where you just send him off to get his head beat in so that you hopefully all of his popularity gets snatched up by the new young guy that beats his face in? So it was interesting to see what they were going to do. They choose Chris Gutierrez. Interesting pick. Why? Because Chris Gutierrez isn't a well-known guy. He's not out there selling a whole bunch of tickets himself. He's not over there moving the needle. People aren't running up and down the streets talking about the next Chris Gutierrez fight. And yet the man is a good fighter. When you watch his fights and you break it down, you see he's skilled, he's improving, he's constantly moving forward, constantly getting better with his game. And then you start to actually break the game down, and it even becomes more interesting. Because Frankie Edgar's getting old now, right? Make no mistake about it. He's on the bad side of 40 years old when it's talking about being a fighter. And what does that do for a guy at these lighter weights? Where typically it's a young man's game at the lighter weights because of the need for the athleticism, the need for the speed, the need for the explosiveness. As you move up in weight, you can start to cover it up with a few things as you start to lose those. But when you're at those lighter weights, man, those are things that are those are weights that are typically dominated by younger guys. So Frankie Edgar's lost a step. Let's be honest with each other. That footwork, it's all the same footwork that we used to see but it's all just a step slower. The combination punching, all the same combinations that we used to see, just a step slower. Now look, he's still got a very high ring IQ. He still knows how to fight, puts himself in good positions. We saw him be successful against Chito Vera in the first round. But then we saw him start to eat some nasty shots. So we see a guy who needs to use a lot of footwork, right? Because when he built his game, it was built on footwork. It was built on combination punching. It was built on mixing in the wrestling. One of the things that made his wrestling so successful was the fact that he always mixed it in. It was hard to predict what he was going to do. Footwork was awesome, kept him moving on these angles. He could mix in the punches, mix in the takedowns, just great stuff. But now he's a step slower. And now we got a guy in Chris Gutierrez who tears up the legs. The man's a kicker, and he wants to go to your legs. He wants to go to them early. He wants to go to them often. He wants to swell them up. He wants to have them all red and ugly looking. He wants to have the commentary team talking about, ooh, look at Frankie Edgar's, look at that calf, look at those thighs. Man, I can imagine what it looks like underneath his shorts. That nasty bruise is starting to peek out. It's welting up already. All that kind of stuff. That's what they want. That's what Chris Gutierrez wants to hear the commentary team saying. He's also got some really quick hands. Also seems how to know how to handle himself in the clinch well. Won't call him great. Purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Won't call him great. Frankie Edgar is definitely the more decorated wrestler. Should Frankie Edgar get him down and get on top, he's known for putting in great ground and pound. But Chris Gutierrez, man, he's younger. He's got a little bit of pep in his step. He's got some explosiveness. So should it go to the ground, is he going to sit there and get held down for 3 minutes? You know, I don't think this is going to turn out like Yair Rodriguez when Frankie Edgar just goes in and blasts him out of there. That's not the way I see this one playing out. And I also know that he's chinny, man. He's gotten caught with a lot of shots. He's gotten hurt. He's gotten dropped. He's gotten knocked unconscious. He's gotten knocked from pillar to post all over the octagon before. He's eaten a lot. I think Chris Gutierrez is able to come out with the victory on this one, man. I think he just figures out a way to land those shots. I think he's tearing up Frankie's legs. I think Frankie isn't able to get the distance like he normally does. I think he's not able to get his punches off. And I think that between the leg kicks and the other stuff that Gutierrez is landing, maybe a counter punch here or there, the inability for Frankie to really be able to close the distance as he wants to, it's going to force him to kind of rush what he wants to do. And when he starts to rush, his takedowns will become predictable. Gutierrez will be able to stop them. For the most part, he'll get taken down maybe once or twice over the course of the 3 rounds. But I think he's able to inflict more punishment. I think he's able to come out with a victory. Unfortunately, I think we see a legend like Frankie Edgar walk away with a loss as his last fight. But hey, it is what it is, man. And hopefully he'll come out and do himself good, even though I expected he'll come out with this loss, right? Hopefully he won't come out and look too slow, look too old, look just too over the hill. I also think that Gutierrez is just going to have an awesome game plan because of the fact that the camp that he's training with over there with Factory X, Mark Montoya, man, they know all about Frankie Edgar. He's training basically right down the street from him forever. You think they haven't studied this guy's film? You think they don't know that they're going to have fighters in there against this guy? I'm pretty sure that they've been breaking down Frankie Edgar's style, and they feel that they have a successful antidote to it. And they've got a guy in Chris Gutierrez who can go out there and execute exactly what they want. So I think Gutierrez comes out with the victory. Let me know what you guys think. Are you a big fan of Frankie Edgar? You've been watching him forever. Do you think he's lost a step? Do you think he's going to be able to put it together? They say every great fighter has one last great fight in him. Is this going to be that one for Frankie Edgar? Let me know what you guys think.